Posted by you/same philosopher 927. Okay, hear me out. I work just a few blocks away from a hospital and can get there pretty quickly by bicycle. Their cafeteria is quaint with good prices, so usually, once a week or so, I go there for lunch. The food isn't what I would call amazing, but they have a nice variety from time to time. The staff even recognize me and are always pleasant. They don't mind that I'm just there for lunch, and it's far quieter eating there than at any local restaurant. I'm on the spectrum and don't like loud noises, so the quiet lunches in this place are a godsend for me some days. Recently, my sister found out I've been eating at the hospital and went off on me about how hospital cafeterias are only supposed to be for people who are at the hospital because they need to be. I retorted that I was giving them business, and it's not like I was taking food out of the mouths of patients. Plus, I only go once a week, so what was the big deal? But she still insisted I was wrong. Then she got our parents involved, and they're siding with her. They are telling me I should only be eating at the hospital if I have an actual reason to be there. I told them they were all crazy and that it was just normal food I was paying for. But now, because neither they nor I are backing down, I'm torn. Am I the jerk for going to eat lunch in a hospital cafeteria once a week just because I work nearby? Update 18 days later. I really apologize for the length of this post, but writing down all the details took way longer than I thought. This situation was downright crazy. I never thought my sister would do something like this. Not too long ago, I, 23M, posted for advice because my parents and sister were angry at me for regularly eating in a hospital cafeteria since it's close to my work. I enjoy the peace and quiet there on the days I eat there. But this situation escalated so radically that I can't believe something so dumb actually happened. My sister did the pettiest thing she's ever done to me, and for completely undeserved reasons too. When my sister found out I was eating at the hospital cafeteria, she went off on me about how that food is just for people who are at the hospital because they need to be. We ended up in a big argument about it, during which I told her it wasn't like I was taking food from the mouths of patients. Then she went to our parents to get them on her side, as she always does, and they immediately sided with her, just like I thought they would. They backed her up, saying that the hospital cafeteria was not a place to go eating casually. We had a big argument, and they spent days hounding me, telling me I was wrong and demanding I stop. So I went to Reddit. There, I learned that not only was I not doing anything wrong, but it's actually very common for people to go eat at hospital cafeterias simply because they like it. I hoped the situation would just fade away, but a few days later, my sister called me, asking if I had stopped eating at the hospital. I said no, and then it started all over again. My parents then called me, fuming and acting like I was supposed to stop going because they said so. I reminded them that I don't live under their roof anymore and that this is exactly the kind of reason why I moved out. They take my sister's side in almost everything. They huffed and puffed about it. This time, the fight didn't stay at home. Other relatives found out because my sister tried to broaden her support. She was so dead set on enforcing her will upon me that she went looking for help from other relatives. However, our parents were the only ones on her side. My uncle personally admonished my parents and her over the phone once I told him what actually happened. He told them they were only siding with my sister because she's their favorite and called them terrible parents for ever playing favorites to begin with. Then, my cousin went to eat with me at that hospital cafeteria and said he'd like to go there once a week too, as he also works nearby and bicycles everywhere. We've already run into each other at lunch there once since then. He was actually rather pleased to find out the food was healthier than most other places. He's a bit of a picky eater, so this place is kind of like his new lunch hangout. My sister got even angrier after finding out there were other people in the family eating at the hospital now too. Once outed, my parents backed down due to embarrassment. They apologized to me and gave me some malarkey about how they honestly thought eating at a hospital was weird and felt like they just needed to defend my sister. I told them they'd been placating my sister for so long that it's all they do whenever she starts something with anyone. She's been treating me like a condescending control freak and a bully since we were teenagers, even though I'm older, and they just kept enabling that. But I won't put up with it anymore. My parents ended up conceding and apologized. Then they made my sister apologize to me too. I could tell she hated every second of it because she tried to speak through her teeth at first. Later on, my parents invited me to dinner as another form of apology. But it felt more like a show to look good to the rest of the family because they told everyone about it before it even happened. The dinner was great, I can't deny. My parents had cooked a turkey, arguably one of my favorite things to eat. I love the drumsticks slathered with gravy. Yeah, I'm kind of a pig when I eat them, but I can't help it. My sister always thought it was hilarious and was one of the few things I didn't mind her laughing about. So, I thought nothing of why she was so giggly at dinner. Later, after the family dinner, I noticed my bike was missing. I had parked it in the backyard out of sight, but it was just gone. I freaked out because it's my only mode of transportation. My parents panicked a bit with me, but my sister seemed the opposite. She actually looked happy and was giggling. I immediately suspected her, and she played innocent, even giving the classic "I can't believe you'd think I'd do something like that" line. I already knew she was extremely petty, but this was a whole new level for her. So I said I was going to the neighbors because I knew they had cameras, and they'd have seen what happened. Then I'd call the cops. My sister suddenly looked panicked. I got mad and said I knew it was her, demanding she give my bike back. She started crying, insisting she hadn't done anything, and our parents immediately took her side, scolding me for daring to accuse her. So I'd had enough and said I was going to the neighbors to ask to check their cameras, and then I'd be calling the police. My sister finally fessed up and called me to come back. The looks on our parents' faces after they had just defended her were priceless. My sister admitted she was so angry at me for making her apologize for something she still believed she was right about, so she planned to have a couple of her friends come and grab my bike during dinner. She said her friends were in a minivan with it just down the street. She then started saying that I couldn't call the police on her anyway because I'm her big brother. Our parents backed her up on that too. But I pulled out my phone and started marching outside again. They ran after me, with my sister begging and crying for me to stop. I called her a brat and told my parents I couldn't believe they were still defending her when she was acting this way. Our parents finally hit their limit with her enabling behavior and told her to make her friends bring my bike back immediately. She got on her phone, sniffling, and called her friends. But then she suddenly ran into her room to talk to them. I couldn't hear a thing she said through the door because it was all in whispers, and our parents looked very worried too. My sister would never have willingly admitted she had my bike stolen. She just kept sobbing that it was only a prank over and over again, repeatedly using the excuse that it's just a cheap bike anyway. I bought it used a few months ago for $50, but it's in great shape and my main mode of transportation. My sister kept looking at our parents to back her up, but this time they just couldn't. So she slumped down in a chair, hugging her knees and waiting with the rest of us. She looked increasingly freaked out the longer her friends took to bring my bike back and was repeatedly texting them. Even though my sister said her friends were just down the street, it took them roughly an hour to bring my bike back. They finally pulled up in the minivan with my bike shoved in the back, completely soaked and covered in mud, like it had just been pulled out of a wet, muddy ditch. The bike is a 700C, so it's too tall for either of them to ride. They had simply driven up, grabbed the bike, and dragged it into the van as quickly as they could before taking off. I say they stole it because I was almost certain in the moment that my sister had told them to dispose of my bike. Had I not pointed out that the neighbors had cameras, I might not have gotten it back at all. When her friends finally arrived, their legs were muddy and wet nearly up to their knees. They both begged me not to report them to the police for taking the bike. I asked them, while recording, to tell me the truth and pointed out that the neighbors had cameras. I asked if my sister had told them to get rid of my bike. They broke down and admitted that yes, my sister had instructed them to take the bike and dump it in a pond a few miles away. They had to go back and retrieve it when they realized they were caught. My bike had been nearly completely submerged in muddy water. Thankfully, I didn't have many added accessories on it besides a detachable headlight and my water bottle. However, the water bottle was missing. I wasn't surprised by what my sister's friends told me, and I had them tell our parents too. They laid into my sister until she was bawling on the floor, kicking and pounding like a toddler. I hadn't seen her act that way since she actually was a toddler, and I found it mortifying that she was still like this on the inside. Then she shut herself in her room. Her friends were banned from ever coming to my parents' house again. Afterward, my sister was forced to come out of her room by her mother and make another big apology to me. Our father then forced her to wash and oil my bike from stem to stern under his supervision while I took apart the headlight to clean and dry it. By the time my sister was done, it was dark outside. She glared at me like I was the devil when she came back into the house, but our parents immediately shut her attitude down and said they'd never been more embarrassed by her in their lives. She went back to crying in her room. I had a very frank discussion with my parents about my sister's childlike behavior and how it stemmed from their spoiling and enabling. I told them I couldn't believe I had to be the voice of reason, but the fact that she was on the floor crying like a toddler, kicking and pounding, showed that she's still mentally a child because of them. I pointed out that they kept making me the scapegoat whenever she screwed up, so she barely knows any sense of accountability. For once, they didn't argue with me about it. Afterward, my father silently drove me and my bike back to my apartment in his SUV. He also gave me some money to replace my bike's missing water bottle before we parted. My sister and her clique used to harass me a fair bit whenever we ran into each other. They made fun of me as a group whenever possible, and I usually just ignored them because they bored me. That really seemed to tick them off. After the bike incident, I received numerous messages from numbers I didn't recognize, cussing me out for making my sister cry over what they called a silly prank. Knowing her, my sister probably fed everyone she knew a very different version of the story. I responded with lengthy replies detailing what actually happened and even stated that I have recordings of her friends admitting the truth. Some people at my sister's college found out what actually happened, maybe from my texts or perhaps because her friends spilled the beans. It embarrassed my sister so much that she came home in a crying tantrum about how people there were calling her and her friends B-words and bike thieves. I may not have gone to college, but I know students who need their bikes are very protective of them, especially since many live on shoestring budgets. My sister said someone even joked that they shouldn't leave a bike around her because it might just disappear if she had to apologize to anyone. She ended up so upset that she refused to leave her room for 3 days to have her pity party. My parents called me up to try and turn everything on me again. I reminded them about the discussion we had days before and told them they needed to stop babying her and let her deal with the repercussions of her own actions. If she fails her classes again, it's because she's not trying like she should be. Then I went off on them, saying they were just looking for someone to blame to make her feel better. She created the problem, not me, and I wasn't going to be the scapegoat anymore. My sister is an adult, and she needs to act like it. They sounded defeated and apologized before ending the call. It seemed like they were genuinely hoping I'd just sit back and take the blame so my sister would feel better, but I never will again. Now my parents are trying to pretend this all never happened, and my sister, along with her clique, is avoiding me at all costs. Which, I suppose, is fine with me because I don't want any more drama. But if something like this happens again, I won't take it from them. Commenter. I remember your first post. Your sister is so bratty that she would have her friends steal your bike and ruin it just to make a point? And your parents don't see a problem with it? What did the rest of your family say about this? Ops response. Oh, they were furious with them. I didn't include details about it because the post was already way too long. But my aunt and uncle gave my parents one hell of a dressing down, twice. The first time was in person, the day after the bike theft happened. They had a long discussion with my parents about how their babying has prevented my sister from growing up and how she wouldn't be able to function without them if she never learns to become an adult. The second time was after my parents called me to try and make me take the blame when my sister locked herself in her room for 3 days. I talked with my cousin that evening when we met up for dinner, and he told his parents, my aunt and uncle. They called my parents to ask them what the hell was going on and told them they were beyond ashamed that they still tried to make me the scapegoat. They said they didn't care if old habits die hard, it had to stop. Let's just say my sister wasn't the only one crying anymore. No one has told me anything about what's going on with my sister at her college for a while, and she's been avoiding me. My parents also haven't spoken to me since that call, so I have no idea what's going on their end.